All right. Gotta admit, that title's a bit of a, well, let's say it's playing on the whole AI craze right now. Catch up with AI.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
But don't worry, we're not diving into algorithms today.
More like diving into a region where algorithms probably can't predict much.
Exactly. We're going deep on Syria. And trust me, this is way more intense than any tech trend. We're talking power struggles, history colliding with modern war, and a situation that could, well, reshape things globally.
If you want to understand how the past shapes the present and maybe even the future, Syria's the place to watch.
Okay, so quick setup. Imagine a country that's gone from being part of the Ottoman Empire to being controlled by France to fighting for its own independence, and then getting sucked into a civil war that's basically a proxy war for superpowers. That's Syria.
And all that stuff that happened before, it echoes in what's going on right now.
So to get this, we need a little history lesson. 1918, Ottoman Empire collapses, right?
Yeah.
Arab forces take Damascus, led by this guy, Emir Faisal. Sounds like a win. Yeah.
On the surface, sure, but
But 1920 rolls around, and France is like, nope, Syria is ours now. They get it as a mandate from the League of Nations. Basically, colonial rule.
and of course, the Syrian people weren't exactly thrilled about being told what to do again.
Understatement of the century. Revolts break out. And in 1925, boom, the Great Syrian Revolt.
That moment, it shows you how much Syrians wanted to control their own destiny, but it also shows how outside powers kept meddling.
A theme we'll see again and again, unfortunately.
Yeah. Fast forward to 1946, Syria finally gets independence from France. But that desire for true self-determination, it doesn't just vanish.
Nope. In fact, 1947, the first Ba'ath Party Congress happens.
This is huge. The rise of Arab nationalism, it's going to massively impact Syria's path.
It's like all those years under someone else's thumb just fueled this intense need for Arab unity and identity.
Which brings us to the Assads, a family you can't ignore when talking about Syria.
First, there's Hafez al-Assad. Takes power in a coup, rules for decades, iron fist, the whole deal. Then his son, Bashar al-Assad, takes over in 2000.
But here's the thing. When Bashar first came in, there was actually some, well, optimism.
Right, like maybe things will change.
He was Western educated, a doctor, not a military man like his father.
So was that hope naive? Or were there actual signs he might do things differently?
It's a debate for sure. There were some initial moves, releasing political prisoners, more internet access. But were those genuine or just, ways to consolidate power? Tough to say.
Sadly, whatever hope there was kind of evaporated. And then 2011 hits. Remember the Arab Spring?
Those uprisings all over the Middle East.
Yeah, Syria gets caught up in that too. Protests demanding change, freedom,
And Bashar's response, brutal crackdown.
and bam, full-blown civil war by mid-2011. And it doesn't stay a Syrian problem for long.
Oh no, it becomes this proxy war with global powers jumping in all with their own goals.
Like stepping onto a game board where the pieces are countries.
And the stakes, way higher than any board game.
Okay, so to understand why everyone's getting involved, we've got to look at what they want. Let's start with Russia. 2015, they step in big time, backing Assad.
Multiple reasons for that. Long ties with Syria, they've got a naval base there they want to keep. Tartus.
Plus, showing off their power on the world stage, countering the West.
Right. Russia saw a chance to reassert themselves and their involvement. Let's just say it really changed the game in Syria.
Huge impact. Okay, then you've got Iran,
Yeah.
also all in on Assad, money, troops, the works,
Their big goal, this thing called the Shia Crescent,
which basically means
extending their influence across the region. It's like a network of allied states, mostly Shia, running from Iran through Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, all the way to the Mediterranean.
which naturally freaks out countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia, seeing that as a threat.
It's a controversial idea, this Shia Crescent. Some see it as Iran's legitimate ambition, others as destabilizing.
Adds a whole other layer of complexity to this mess, for
Yeah.
sure. And then there's Turkey. Started out backing the Syrian rebels, but
Turkey, their involvement. Complicated, to say the least. Sometimes it feels like they're playing both sides.
which never a good idea in a situation like this.
Okay. One of their big worries is the Kurds in northern Syria. See, Turkey considers some Kurdish groups, the PKK specifically, as terrorists.
So they're trying to support the Syrian opposition,
Yeah.
but also not let the Kurds gain too much power. Tricky balancing act.
Leads to accusations that they're, well, not exactly being straightforward.
So I've got Russia, Iran, Turkey, all with their own agendas, making moves in Syria like it's a chessboard.
And then comes plot twist.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting. Recent reports are saying Assad's power might actually be crumbling. opposition gaining ground, rumors he might even flee.
Now we got to be careful with this info. War zones, information's always fuzzy.
True, true. But it does feel like something's shifting. The idea of Assad's regime actually collapsing, not so unthinkable anymore.
If you're in Syria right now, can you imagine the hope, the fear, the uncertainty? It's got to be intense.
Is this freedom, chaos,
Hmm.
something in between?
Probably a bit of all of it. If a regime as powerful as Assad's falls, the impact's going to be huge, not just for Syria, but for everyone. This is where our catch-up, well, not with AI, but with reality, really gets going. Welcome back.
You know, it's so easy to get lost in all the big picture stuff, right?
Yeah.
The power plays, who's backing who. But we got to remember the people actually in Syria.
Absolutely. Over a decade of war, displacement, suffering, it's hard to even grasp.
A whole generation growing up with nothing but violence and instability. Those scars, they don't just disappear.
So even if Assad goes, even if that happens, the road ahead for Syria, it's going to be rough.
Rebuilding a whole country, the economy, everything. Where do you even start?
Massive effort needed, not just from Syrians, but from, well, everyone, really.
The amount of aid, money, expertise it'll take, mind-boggling.
And then there's the politics of it all. Assad's gone, okay, who fills that vacuum?
Right, exactly. Who takes over?
Oh.
How do you even transition to a new government after all this? Especially when...
The opposition's not exactly one big, happy family.
That's what I was going to say. They're fragmented, different groups, all wanting power.
Each with their own ideas, goals. It's not a guarantee they'll just, magically unite and create a stable Syria.
Which would be a nightmare for the people who have already been through so much. And then there's the whole question of, justice.
Oh, absolutely. After all the brutality, the human rights abuses, people are going to want accountability.
You can't just pretend that stuff didn't happen.
But getting justice after a conflict like this, so complex.
It's this balance, right? You want people held responsible, but you also need stability. You don't want to stir things up even more.
Any justice process has got to be seen as fair. Otherwise, it just feels like the winners punishing the losers.
And that could just lead to more problems down the line. And we haven't even talked about the regional stuff.
Right. Syria's neighbors, they're not just watching from the sidelines. They've all been affected, and they all have a stake in what happens next.
We mentioned Russia, Iran, Turkey. But you've also got Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, Saudi Arabia.
Each with their own worries, their own alliances, trying to make sure things go in a direction that benefits them.
It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces keep moving.
Makes predicting the future, well, pretty impossible.
So, where does that leave us? Syria may be on the verge of huge change, tons of challenges ahead, all these other countries involved. Is there any reason to be hopeful?
Hard to say for sure. It's going to be long. It's going to be hard. That much is certain.
But the Syrian people, man, they've shown incredible resilience. They've been through so much.
And there are people, groups, both inside and outside Syria, who are working towards a better future.
It ultimately comes down to the Syrians themselves, right? It's their country, their future.
All we can do is hope they get the support and the space to figure out what that future looks like.
So after all this, after everything we've talked about, what does it mean for, those of us watching from afar? How do we even process this, and is there anything we can do?
That's the big question, and that's what we'll tackle in the last part of our discussion.
It's heavy stuff, right? We've laid out all these problems, this whole crisis, and it's easy to feel kind of helpless. What can one person even do?
Yeah, I get that. It's overwhelming. But even small actions, they can make a difference. Think of it like, I don't know, a mosaic. Each little piece matters.
Okay, I like that. So where do we even begin? What can people listening actually do?
Well, first things first, stay informed. Don't just tune it out because it's, far away or complicated. Keep reading, keep learning, find reliable sources.
All right, go beyond the headlines, dig deeper.
Exactly. And then think about your skills. What are you good at? What do you care about? Can you use that to, I don't know, raise awareness? Donate to a good organization.
Find that point where your passion and the situation in Syria, where they intersect.
Yes. And even if you can't donate, you can volunteer, spread the word, talk to people.
Use your voice.
Yeah.
Write to your representatives. Tell them this matters. Push for more aid, more diplomacy.
All those individual voices, they add up. They put pressure on those in power to actually do something.
Right. Make them see that people care. But there's one more thing, and I think this might be the most important of all.
What's that?
Empathy. Remember that behind all the politics, the fighting,
Yeah.
there are real people, families, kids, just trying to survive.
It's so easy to get desensitized when you see these conflicts on the news all the time. But we have to remember the human cost.
Yeah. So read their stories, listen to their experiences, fight those narratives that dehumanize people caught in war.
Because when you connect on that human level, it changes how you see things.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on Syria, I'm curious, what stuck with you? What will you take away from this conversation?
Syria's story is far from over. And what happens there, it impacts all of us. So let's stay informed, stay engaged, and most of all, let's stay compassionate.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Let's all keep learning, keep pushing for a better world, one step at a time.